I think you're in quite the pickle there, Dick.
Yeah, but I got that quarter panel.
Yeah, you're using it right now.
All right, so as you guys could see in the previous clips and pictures, I got a chance to use this quarter panel armor, and I gotta say I'm really impressed. It held up, and later in the video you're gonna hear me complain about the powder coating and how I feel that it's not gonna last, but I think maybe I was wrong. So let me turn you around and show you the damage that was done when I hit that rock, and we'll talk about it a little bit. So this is where I put the quarter panel into that rock surface there, that big rock jutting out, and it set it here, and then it moved up and down as I tried to pull forward, and it just barely scraped that. You can see right here, maybe it went through the powder coat just a little bit, but that's not bad at all. So I gotta say, these quarter panel armors saved the day, at least in that situation, because this is just sheet metal right here. So if I would have put that surface into that rock, it would have destroyed that side of the Jeep. So super happy with these. Hey, thanks for checking out the channel, checking out the video. Today we're working on quarter panel armor for the Jeep TJ behind me. Now, the quarter panel armor I went with was probably the cheapest that you can find on the internet. And I gotta say, so far, I'm pretty impressed. So I found this on Amazon. It was the QUAFU. So I wanna say it's Quafu. I paid $188. Right now, I just looked, it's at $205, still pretty cheap. It came packaged very nice. So this here is the driver's side. You can see it has the fuel door cut out, and it looks pretty good. I already got the passenger side on. The biggest obstacle so far really has been my taillights. So if you have factory style taillights, then you're not gonna have any problem, because there is a cutout behind it so you can access your bolts. It comes with all the hardware you need and then some. So here's what we're dealing with. Big pile. This is some other stuff I had going on. So it came with washers, it came with lock nuts, it came with countersunk bolts with Allen heads on it. And then it also came with a bunch of smaller Allens. So the majority of the bolts that it comes with are about 1 inch long. And then it comes with 2 that are maybe 3 inches long. And so your short ones are gonna go in most of the holes. Now back here is kind of hard to get to. You will have to take out your inner wheel well liner. This is a 2003 TJ right here. And you can see back here, I'll stick you in there. I believe that is your charcoal canister. It has something to do with emissions and fuel and smells, I believe. And it's definitely in the way. Hopefully on the driver's side, we don't have anything like that to deal with, because getting to some of the bolts is very difficult. So I will point out, in here, you can see that big hole. I cut that out with a hole saw, and that corresponds to this lower hole on the outside. And in order to get that short bolt in there, you're gonna have to do something about that box in there, essentially. And you know, either cut it out with a grinding wheel if you can get in there. I was able to fit in there with the hole saw, cut it out. Now I'll be able to put my hardware in and put a nut on the outside. The biggest thing with this is you're gonna wanna put it up, be happy with it, clamp it in place, and then drill a hole, put the hardware in. Drill a hole, put the hardware in. That's what I did from front to back. Well, actually I started with this corner, and then I did these ones back here, and then back to the front. And then the other spot I wanted to point out, the passenger side is pretty easy. You have easy access. I already took my carpet out the other day, but you have easy access to these bolts. Put a nut on the back. The driver's side, you will have to pay attention. You have a wire loom that goes along that. And then so this is the one I wanted to point out, where the quarter panel armor comes down around the door. I assume you're supposed to use this long bolt, but it interferes with your seat belt. So I took one of the long bolts, I cut it down, and this is also got like a box in there. So instead of just being a piece of sheet metal, you have two pieces of sheet metal essentially. And I think a lot of people put the short bolt on this one, that in order to get to that safely, I felt like I would need to take my seat out, and I didn't want to do that. So I put my hole saw on that one down there so that I could use the long bolt here. And I think that'll work out just fine. Now, the other hardware is for if you use, I believe they sell a tube style fender that will go in this factory location. And then you have access holes to your factory hardware spots. I did notice that mine didn't quite line up right. I don't know if that's because this radius right here isn't super tight, and maybe I could have worked that into place, but I'm pretty happy with how that looks. And eventually I'll be trimming this and coming clear back when I do my axle stretch, which leads me to one of the biggest complaints with cheap armor like this. So this one, say it's 200 bucks right now. That's like $300-400 cheaper than the big boys, the big brands. But the difference is, for one, this is 15/32, which is a little bit thicker than an 1/8, I believe, but might be smaller than 3/16. A lot of the other companies use 3/16. Looking at this, I think it's plenty thick. But the biggest gripe that I have, and that the internet has, is that this comes powder coated. So the other ones don't, and they're more money. So this seems appealing because it has powder coat on it already, and I'm going to run it for a bit. But the problem with cheap armor like this, or, you know, pretty much any Jeep part that comes from overseas and already has powder coat on it, is that the powder coat is not very good. So it's going to flake, it's going to chip, and you're going to get rust on it at some point. So I've already mounted this. In the future, I'll take it off, I'll trim it when I do my stretch, and I will use some citrus orange or whatever paint stripper and take that powder coat off and paint it how I want to. For now, you know, I bolted this on in place. I am going to take it off. I'm going to rattle can some spots behind it. And then I'm also going to put this PB Blaster surface shield on there, just to kind of have a barrier between this panel and the sheet metal of the Jeep. I'm hoping fingers crossed that helps with any you know, rust prevention that I need. But I definitely want to take that panel off because I've been, you know, drilling and cutting and whatnot, and so there's a little metal shavings in between there. And after a while, you know, if that's flexing at all and you have those metal shavings in there, it's definitely going to be a good environment for rust to form. So that's one thing to keep in mind when doing any quarter armor or rock sliders, for that matter. Anything where armor bolts to the sheet metal of the Jeep, there's always a chance that you will eventually get some surface rust. That's where we're at now. I think I covered the troublesome areas that I was concerned with and pointed out the stuff on this passenger side. Now I am going to move the Jeep over and start on the driver's side, and I'll take you guys along with that. The first step of that is going to be to take off my flare. This Jeep came with pocket style flares on it. I've already trimmed them, and the passenger side, when I tried taking it off, it came off in about 10 pieces. So I don't plan on running those. Eventually I'm going to build the tube style fenders for it. So the first step is going to be take this off, take the inner liner out. I'll have to remove this and reinstall it later. Have to remove my plate, have to remove my tail light. And I think I'm just going to put a time lapse up. If I run into any problems, I will point them out afterwards. All right, so to sum it up, this was a pretty easy install. I had to remove all the factory stuff. I held it up in place. I used clamps to hold it. I, just aligned it with my eye. I didn't really do any measuring. And then I just put one bolt in at a time, drilled a hole, put a bolt in, drilled a hole, put a bolt in, from the back to the front. And then I did remove it after I had all the holes drilled, masked it off, put a coat of paint under there, just to help with corrosion and rust. Once the paint was dry, I simply bolted it back on. It saved the day, it served its purpose. In addition to that, I think it looks great. I really like the black in contrast to the red. And you probably noticed my Jeep has a lot of black on it, so that's the accent color. But even given some of the fitment issues, some of these holes don't line up perfectly. This radius is a little on the big side. Even given that stuff, I think this is well worth the money, especially coming with the powder coat on it. Like I said earlier in the video, I was skeptical about that, whether it was going to be good or not. And I mean, it might start to flake and chip after a while anyway. But so far it's held up good and it looks great. So this was overall a great purchase. I highly recommend it. It's definitely a lot better than spending, $600 on one of the more name brands. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.